All right, exam week is kind of giving us a little bit of a breather in terms of basketball scheduling and a little bit of everything else.
Yep.
Also gives us an opportunity to kind of discuss where things are at. It's kind of a de facto halfway point.
Yes, it is.
So, of course, let me introduce us. Richard Walker, sports editor for the Star and the Gazette. Joe Hughes, I'm a reporter here at the Gazette. Well, I do work for the Star too. So.
Yeah.
But just going through the previous week of high school basketball, and this is kind of an extended one of where we're just kind of looking at everything since the start of the season. I guess we might as well just jump right into it. What storylines have really caught your eye at this early juncture of the basketball season?
East Lincoln and Lincoln Charter show no signs of slowing after last year being really solid teams. East Lincoln may be a little better even. Kings Mountain had a little bit of a slow start, which we could have predicted based on the strength of their schedule and the fact that their football team went all the way to the Western Finals in football, but they're back kind of where they are.
Yeah.
The Big South girls race, we thought Ashbrook would be a dominant team, but would have significant challenges. They've received some from Kings Mountain and North Gaston. You've got three really good teams that have kind of separated themselves a little bit from the pack. And Gaston Day may not quite be as good as last year, but they still have a bit left in the tank, and it'll be curious to see how the NCISAA playoff pairings play out. They've faced stiff competition and lost in the semifinals and finals the last 2 years. Could this be a special year for them? They have they certainly have veteran leadership with Diva Lade, Adela Kuhn, John Crump, and Jacob Belton, who have been through those wars with the Nate Hintons, who's now at Houston, Quan McClooney, who's now at College of Charleston, and MJ Armstrong, it's now at Lincoln Memorial. So it'll be curious to see how that works for them. But, like I said, it's de facto midpoint of the season. Ashbrook Haas is looming in the future. That'll be another interesting matchup. Crest with a new coach, Scooter Lawrence, appears to be getting some traction there. Big wins for them last week. They beat Haas and North Gaston. Not sure when the year started I'd have felt that would have been possible.
Right.
But I saw the Haas game. I was, I walked away kind of feeling like, well, maybe Haas just had a bad night. They struggled shooting free throws and from the field. But Crest appeared to kind of take any challenge and any threat to their lead and managed to answer it. And then they turn around and win the game against North Gaston. And ironically enough, I believe they're 4-1 in the conference. Their only loss was at Stuart Kramer, who has had a bit of a rough year. But that win looks really good for Stuart Kramer at this point.
Certainly, and I guess another thing is kind of Huss is up and down.
Yeah.
So they tend to play up the competition, down the competition. They've beaten Butler, but also lost to Crest.
Yeah.
So you really don't, at this point in the season, you still don't really know who Hunter Huss is.
Sure. And speaking of which, the other league that is just now getting underway, the Southwestern 2A, appears to be incredibly competitive in the boys' race. It looks like East Rutherford separated themselves in the girls' race, but last year they had a two-way tie for the conference championship, 7-3 conference records. I think a couple teams were 6-4. I don't know that it'll be quite that tightly compacted again, but when you look at East Rutherford, RS Central, Shelby, and South Point, those four teams look to be very worthy teams. They all fall into the playoffs last year. I would foresee that happening again.
Right. And you mentioned the Ashbrook girls 31-game conference win streak that came to an end last week at Kings Mountain. What is kind of the will be the enduring legacy of that streak that you think?
Well, they had some players that got together, the Jada Davies, Ivana McGill. I mean, you never know when something like that's going to kind of gel just right. East Lincoln's probably going through that. Lincoln Charter. Lincoln Charter's won a bunch of conference games in a row. Shows no signs of their winning streak dates way back to actually a forfeit loss because they overscheduled a couple of years ago. So, it's weird. You live through these stretches, and it always seems fascinating how many schools who are really good have an adversarial opponent that's right there, kind of their equal, and then sometimes they can kind of blow through it. I tend to feel like Ashbrook had some worthy challengers in Farsview a couple of years ago, their last loss before they lost the other day against Kings Mountain, and I saw North Gaston beat them in a tournament setting a couple of years ago at Ashbrook. So it's not like Ashbrook, but their record makes it look like they didn't have any challenges. They did, but they seemed to answer them all. And 31 games in the current climate, it'll be hard to duplicate, but Lincoln Charter's doing their best to do it. East Lincoln looks like they've got a shot at lengthening out a long winning streak this year. So it'll be curious to see how long those schools can kind of keep it all together. Obviously, and the coaches will tell you, you got to have players, you got to have some, breaks go your way, and then just simple good luck. And the schedule shines on you. The other team's best player maybe has a bad day or gets injured or any number of things happen. I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of play into that, and you stay out of foul trouble. I mean, there's a lot of bad breaks that can happen during the game. In fact, as I remember, when North Gaston beat Ashbrook in that tournament, Ashbrook had significant foul trouble issues with significant players, and North Gaston played beyond what you would generally expect them to play, and they managed to answer the bell and win that game. Now, could that happen again this year? It looks to me like Kings Mountain, North Gaston, and Ashbrook, the margin of error for them is slim, even as Kings Mountain really had their way with North Gaston in a tournament setting when North Gaston was out one of their significant players. I think it's going to be curious to see how this plays out. Odds would tell me that it'd be hard for Kings Mountain to stay unbeaten, but if they do, they have certainly faced some challenges, because they at least have met, presumably, North Gaston and Ashbrook 5 or 6 times to pull that off, because they played North Gaston in Christmas tournament. Obviously, they got the 4 regular season matches. They have matchups. They'll have to face at least one of them, possibly both of them, in the conference tournament. So, it's going to be, if Kings Mountain can pull that off, boy, kudos to Kings Mountain girls for pulling that off.
In Forest View, the Forest View girls also can
they're
play
not
up
drop below, but I think they can hit the high notes and maybe knock those teams off. One of those 3 teams off.
Certainly. And of course, we still have plenty of basketball left, but at this halfway point, we like to kind of play these little questions and play these games. Who would be your boys player of the year and your girls player of the year?
Wow. I don't want to be prisoner of the moment, but after watching Demalade Adelakun go for 39 and 17 points, he's going to be a hard person to beat. I know that Zeke Littlejohn has put up big numbers at Kings Mountain. Sydney Dollars had a great year at East Lincoln. Lincoln Charter seems to be a little balanced. I don't know that any one particular player stands up for them. Obviously, Jackson Gabriel and Levante Knox are really solid players. I might lean towards Adelakun at this point, but I always look at this as to see how you do in the playoffs, because certainly the conferences have their opportunity to honor their particular players, whatever you think the political views or machinations may be. And there was a lot of unhappiness in the Southern Piedmont 1A last year because Lincoln Charter got shut out of both Player of the Year and Coach of the Year. Not sure that was a legitimate vote, but that's how it played out. But as we speak today, based on what I saw last week, Adelakun seems to be coming, and he's going to be a Division I player. And it'll be curious to see if Gaston Day can keep that momentum going. And I think a lot of people looked at that close win over Gaston Christian as what's wrong with Gaston Day. I think Gaston Christian's pretty good. I can see Gaston Christian with Marley Gordon and some of their other good players surprise some people in the second half of the year. And they're a very young team. Gordon's a junior. They've got some other good, talented young players. I think Gaston Christian may break through that ceiling and knock off Gaston Day at some point. I mean, they may get a shot at them in the tournament this year. They don't play them again in the regular season. This is a 1-game regular season matchup, but they led that game and controlled that game. And if Adelakun, I think he scored the last 17 points of the game for Gaston Day, including the winning layup with a few seconds to go. And they needed every bit of that from Adelakun. And on the girls' side, I guess, is Sanaya Wilson or Hannah Clark, who's the most important player for them? And it looks like they play really well in concert. So, I got to give the nod to those Kings Mountain girls. I mean, maybe a pick 'em between the two of them, but they've, not that people didn't think they would be a talented team, but they've really kind of stepped it up beyond, I think, even their own expectations.
Those two really work well together and really have a good 1-2 punch. If you try to neutralize one, you have Wilson driving the lane. If you try to crunch everything into the paint, you have Clark out there that can just knock daggers down from 3. So they're really a great 1-2 punch and really exactly the reason why they're one of our top teams right now. What team do you think is most capable of making a run?
Well, I think based on their background and experiences, you have to go with Lincoln Charter and Gaston Day. They've both been there. How they handle that moving forward. I know Lincoln Charter felt like they had missed an opportunity a year ago because the perception was that Winston-Salem Prep wasn't as good as they had been. And Winston-Salem Prep really took it to them in that game at UNC Greensboro. We will see. It's possible, certainly, that they can meet again. And then Gaston Day has been just knocking on that door, and it almost would be fated for the third most talented team of this 3 years of them really being successful to be the team to finally break through. But, you know, perhaps that experience will come into play. I mean, think about their makeup. They've got a point guard with experience in Jakai Belton. They've got a kind of jack of all trades player in Crump that is a good defender, a good ball handler, can give you some offense, and Delacoon, which in the current lay of high school basketball, it's rare to have a 6'8" post player who is athletic, active, and you know can do a lot of things for you. And you can run it can be the hub of your offense and defense.
Right, most definitely, and of course East Lincoln.
Yeah, right. I just think 2A is really challenging.
Very much so.
I think the problem for East Lincoln is as good as they can be. There's a lot of tough teams out there, but you know I've seen them be in the state finals twice. So I mean, these guys, particularly Sidney Dollar, watched his brother be in 2 state championship games. So I know, you know, he may not have actual playing experience in that, but he's seen what that big stage looks like.
And the great thing is he's not alone.
No, he's got a lot, and they're fun to watch. I would say this: they might be the most fun team to watch. You'll go through stretches of them, the ball doesn't hit the floor. They're so unselfish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you never really know who's going to be the leading scorer on any given
I mean, Dollar's the most spectacular player because of his jumping and athletic ability, but they have got a really skilled basketball team.
Yeah. John Bean's really been lethal from 3 lately. And speaking of, what game are you most looking forward to once we resume action here in full scale later this week?
Well, I'm going to a game Friday that'll be fascinating to see how Piedmont Community Charter and Highland Tech do. Obviously, in that league, Lincoln Charter is the runaway favorite, but somebody's going to kind of be that second place team. Cherryville has made a case for it. They've now beaten Vesper City twice. Vesper City's got some work to do to get back in it. Piedmont Community Charter beat Cherryville. Highland Tech has had some impressive early season wins. Piedmont Community Charter goes to Highland Tech after beating Cherryville at home, and they can win. If they could win at Highland Tech, that would really put them in a strong position to be that second place team in a league where, you know, we talked about before the year started, a lot of people felt they were playing for second place to begin with.
Right, and of course, a non-conference game on Saturday, you have Kings Mountain at East Lincoln.
Yeah, you'll be going to that one. That'll be an interesting matchup between two teams, kind of a break from conference play, but not a break as far as a competitiveness for sure.
And that, kudos to both coaches for scheduling that home and home, just because they don't really have to play that game.
You could argue based on the seeding process, they don't benefit because one of them's going to lose.
Right. I guess it would end up just kind of being a wash if Kings Mountain was able to go up there and win a game. Who knows? Yeah. But I guess that's it for this week. And of course, we'll be back next Tuesday. Keep voting for our players of the week. It's all up to you. We really enjoy kind of allowing y'all to let us know exactly what y'all are thinking, and that's one great way for y'all to let us know that. But any final thoughts?
No, that's it. Keep going to the games, and as Joe said, keep voting on GastonGazette.com, and you know we welcome your feedback and interest and your votes, because it kind of gives us an idea of who's out there paying attention to what's going on in their local community and following local high school sports and this season high school basketball in particular.
All right, and we'll see y'all next week. Have a great one.